study of Indian history, the period from the 8th to the 18th century is commonly referred to as the medieval period. However, in Europe, the medieval period is generally defined as the period of European history from the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century to the Renaissance, a cultural movement in the 14th and 15th centuries. During this time, the Church of Rome, the Christian Church, dominated the Western world. While Christianity dominated most of Europe, Islam became a powerful force in Central Asia, the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Southern Europe during the medieval period. Medieval India was influenced by religious developments in these regions, so it's important to know about them. How did these two religions begin, and what did they teach their followers? When the Romans conquered Palestine in the 1st century BC, the Jews who lived there were oppressed and longed for a Messiah who would liberate them and gather all Jews back to their homeland. Around this time, Jesus Christ is believed to have been born in a stable in Bethlehem to Mary and her husband Joseph. He grew up in Nazareth in northern Palestine, where he studied Jewish scriptures. According to Christian scriptures, Jesus had a revelation from God when he was about 30 years old, where he was asked to fulfill a mission to free men from evil. This was the beginning of his life as a preacher and healer, and the start of the religion of Christianity. Jesus assembled 12 disciples, including 4 fishermen and a tax collector. He traveled in northern Palestine for the next 3 years, preaching the message of love. Jesus used parables or stories to teach his followers that there is only one God. People should love their neighbors. They should help the needy, and they should forgive their enemies. The Bible tells us that Jesus performed many miracles, including healing the sick, walking on water, and feeding the multitudes, in other words, feeding a great number of people.
The Bible tells us that Jesus helped blind people to see, cured people of leprosy, and helped people who were paralyzed to walk. Jesus is said to have walked on the water of the lake known as the Sea of Galilee. Jesus sent his disciples out on the lake in a boat and then walked out after them. The Bible says that on one occasion, Jesus was giving a sermon to a multitude of people when his disciples realized they had no food. A small boy offered 5 loaves and 2 fish that Jesus then used to feed the whole crowd. It is said that when everyone had eaten their fill, the disciples filled 12 baskets with the leftovers.
Jewish religious leaders did not like Jesus' interpretation of the scriptures, and many rich and powerful people were afraid of his growing influence. They convinced the Roman governor at the time to arrest him. Jesus was sentenced to death and crucified on a cross. Scriptures state that after this, he rose from the dead and, soon after, he ascended into heaven. Despite his death, Jesus' teachings continued to influence the world. 4 Gospels describing Jesus' life and teachings were written, and the disciple Peter actively spread Jesus' teachings as far away as Rome. The Roman ruler, Constantine I, embraced Christianity. By the end of the 4th century, Christianity had become the official religion of the Roman Empire. The Bishop of Rome became known as the Pope and was recognized as the successor to the disciple Peter. Monks and monasteries were important because they spread Christianity. They were centers of learning, and they served and cared for people.
Some medieval monks became missionaries who were sent out to spread the teachings of Jesus beyond the Roman Empire. By the 10th century, most of Europe had embraced Christianity. Christianity had also spread to some parts of India, the Middle East, and Africa. Medieval monks and nuns played an important role in caring for the sick. They distributed food during famines. Monasteries also provided weary travelers with a place to stay. Monks retained ancient learning by copying numerous ancient Greek and Roman manuscripts as well as holy books. Also, early Christian monasteries taught future monks to read and write as well as logic and mathematics. Later on, monasteries began to teach those who did not become monks, which led to the evolution of schools and universities.
The Byzantine Empire existed from AD 476 to 1453. It developed from the eastern half of the Roman Empire. The Sasanian Empire existed in what is now Iran from AD 224 until 651. Copper is too soft for use in tools or weapons, but it was valued for its decorative uses. Every society's need to feed its people made grain a valuable trade item. Incense was often used in religious ceremonies, including those of the early Christian church. Ivory from the tusks of elephants was carved and used to decorate thrones, boxes, caskets, and other objects. In AD 622, the Islamic prophet Mohammed was forced to leave the trading city of Mecca. He and his followers fled along a caravan route to a city they renamed Medina. This journey became known as the Hijra. Perfumes were used for both religious purposes and to create a pleasantly scented living space. Asian silk was prized for its smooth, luxurious texture. At one time, only the Chinese knew the secret of its production, but in the 500s, silkworms were smuggled into Europe. Europeans' demand for expensive Asian spices would eventually lead them to seek shorter sea routes to East Asia. Persia and India produced and traded textiles woven from sheep's wool and from cotton, which the early Greeks called tree wool.